Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar from the University of King's College, all about financial aid. Or I should probably say good morning or good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in or when you're watching this. Um, my name is Yolana Wassersag. I'm the Assistant Registrar Student Recruitment here at King's, and I'm online with two of my colleagues from King's who are both experts in various aspects of bursaries and financial planning. So I'm going to give them both a chance to introduce themselves before we get started. Charlene, would you like to begin?
Thank you for joining us. I'm Charlene Salter, and I manage student accounts at the University of King's College. Everything to do with student loans, to payments, to fully funded, RESPs, anything like that. Yeah, welcome.
And Kathy, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Kathy Reed. I am the Assistant Registrar for Institutional Research and Awards. And so I administer the King's scholarships and bursaries.
Wonderful. So just to give you a little bit of a lay of the land before we dive into some useful content and information, a couple things you might want to know. First of all, this webinar is recorded. So if you have a disaster halfway through and you need to run off or your Wi-Fi disappears, please don't worry. Everyone who registered for this session is going to receive a video link to the recording, along with a little reminder about our email addresses, how to reach us, some other types of events that are coming up from King's that you might enjoy checking out. So you'll be getting an email from me, I think first thing tomorrow morning, certainly by end of day tomorrow, with a recording of this session. The other thing I want to highlight is that today's session really is going to focus on financial aid. You may have noticed, you may have even come to the other webinar that we did last week, which was all about scholarships. We had a lot to say about scholarships, so we had to split them out into two webinars. If you're disappointed because you missed the webinar on scholarships and you'd like to know what we talked about, don't worry. Like I said, we record all of our webinars. So right now, I'm just pasting a link in the chat to the video on the King's YouTube channel, where you can watch that scholarships webinar that we recorded last week in case you missed it. So yeah, we won't be covering too much about scholarships tonight. We'll be focusing more on bursaries, loans, and other aspects of your financial planning. The other thing I should say before we continue is that even though we're all meeting virtually right now in a kind of cloud space, the real world that I'm in is here in Kjipuktuk, also known as Halifax, right here in Mi'kma'ki. The University of King's College is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. So I really hope that wherever you're joining us from, whatever city or country or Indigenous territory you might be joining us from, you are doing well and feeling safe and healthy during this very flu season ridden time of year. Do feel free to introduce yourself. If you want to say hi and tell us where you're from in the chat, you absolutely can. You don't have to. It's just open as an option. We like knowing that you're there and that we're not just talking into the void. And if you do have questions at any point during the webinar, you'll notice on your Zoom screen that there's a Q&A button. Feel free to put in your questions. We're going to go over some useful content and leave time for questions at the end. So we'll try to get through as many of your questions as we can tonight. So I think that's, hello, we have someone joining us from Nigeria. It's morning there. That's awesome. And we also have people from much, much less far away, like Bootleers Point, Nova Scotia, Ithaca, New York. It's really great to have you all here. So thank you so much for taking the time to say hello. So what I'm going to do during this webinar is share my screen and take you to the King's website and give you a chance to see where to find some of this useful information that we're covering during the course of the webinar. So give me just one moment to share my screen and we'll take you there. Okay. So you should now be able to see where we are at ukings.ca, the website for the University of King's College. I just wanted to point out that right now, right in the middle of the screen, right there where your eye is the button that says RSVP for our winter open house. If you're in Ithaca, New York or Nigeria, this is probably not the most convenient information, but if you're in Nova Scotia or close by, you might want to come visit us on campus for our open house day on February 24th. So if that's something you're interested in, please sign up for that event. We look forward to seeing you there. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Kathy in just a moment to talk to you about bursaries. And if you'd like to check out where to find this information on our website, here's how you get there. So we're going to the main menu and clicking on admissions and then finances. Scholarships and awards information is here. If you're looking for bursaries, we're going to financial aid. And you'll see lots of useful information, including our bursaries page. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Kathy to talk us through the bursary application process. But Kathy, do me a favor and unmute your mic.
You'd think after all this time I would have learned. Yoli, if I could ask you to pull the bursary application up just so everyone can have a look at it. So I should say, first off, that if you have questions about the bursary application, or you even actually would like to know where to find it, again, sometimes it's just as easy for me to email you the link. So if at any time you have questions or you just want to reach out to me and ask for the link again, you can do that at awards@ukings.ca. So keep that email address in mind, because I'm here at the other end hoping to hear from you. So we have tried to simplify our bursary application over the years. So this form is actually 2 short pages. So the first page has we just ask a few questions of, biographical information. And there is a line here about asking you if you've applied for a government student loan. So we really encourage students who are able, and so not everyone can, so I realize that, to apply for a government student loan in their province, or if you're in the US, just because, for all kinds of reasons. But we do like to know how much you are receiving from the government, because we do factor that into the student loan assessment when we see it. So after you fill in your autobiographical information, here's the important piece. This is where we collect your financial information. And it's early on, so it's hard for you to get exact numbers. So we want your best estimate for what you think your expenses and your resources are going to be. So again, student loan information isn't always available until later in the spring. And the tuition information is not up to date until later in the spring as well. So I make an assessment based on the difference between your resources and your expenses. So it's much easier for me to make to come to a decision with as much information as I have. So again, I can't stress this enough. If you're filling out the application and you have questions, and please reach out to me, and I'm happy to talk you through it if you have any questions. So there's farther down, there's a little box that we're asking for a little bit of information about why you have a financial need. And if you are not eligible to apply for a government loan, this is a place where you could put that, and just anything else that you think will be helpful in getting me to come to a decision about an amount. So I think that's it. It shouldn't be too complicated. Normally I start looking at bursary applications later in the spring when the student loan portals open. So, however, again, you can apply anytime. There is no deadline. And if you haven't made up your mind, or you haven't got all your information together to apply before coming, you can apply for a bursary at any time during the academic year. So we try to be fairly flexible with our deadlines, and so that's an option that's open to you as terms goes by. So I think that's it for bursaries.
Kathy, is there anything you want to add about either the International Student Bursary or the Urgent Needs Bursary before we move on to the content that Charlene will be covering?
So you'll discover, if you click on the International Student Bursary application, you'll discover that it's exactly the same as the general bursary. And so we understand that international students don't have access to government student loans necessarily, and except for US students. And so there may be information in here that, or questions that don't pertain to you, but we do, and so you don't have to fill out more than one application if you're an international student, but we'll need to see that on the form. But we do try to address the issue. We know that student tuition is higher for international students, and so we are trying to get we'd like to get an information on any unmet need that you might have that's over and above the resources that you've gathered together. So I guess that's it for now. So again, any questions that you might have or any confusion, please reach out to me. So the Urgent Need Bursary Program is for students who find themselves coming up short in the year. It's to help you if you come across any expenses that you hadn't planned on, or you have an emergency. It's just you just need to email me and tell me your circumstances, and we'll arrange to get you a small cash award as quickly as we possibly can. So that's just another option that is available in case you need it.
I'm just going to jump in because I see that there's a question in the chat about our bursary application. There's someone who's asked, I'm an international student. What does having a student number mean? There's a section on our application form where we ask for a student number. So a student number refers to the number that you'll receive when you are admitted to the university. It's on your admissions letter. So we probably should make it clear that you do need to apply to King's for admissions first before you'd be filling out a bursary application. Upon receiving your letter of admission from King's, there should be a student ID number on there. It usually starts with a B00. Okay, great. So I think we can jump back to any more questions about bursaries later on, but I want to turn things over to Charlene to speak to student loans and a couple of other really useful topics. So I'll let you take it from here, Charlene.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me, guys? Perfect. So basically, we want to start with student loans. So when you apply for a student loan, you apply through the province you're a permanent resident of. So even if you're a student from Ontario coming to Halifax to come to King's, you would not apply as a Nova Scotia resident. You would apply as an Ontario resident. So again, you apply for a student loan through the province you're a permanent resident of, regardless if you're going out of province to go to post-secondary. There is only one application you need to apply for. There's not a separate for federal and provincial. It is one application, and again, is through the province you're a permanent resident of. It is really important, although we are directly affiliated with Dalhousie, we share the same campus, things like that. When it comes to student loans, they're completely separate. So you have to put down your educational institution on your application is University of King's College. If you put down Dalhousie, it will be denied and it will delay your student loan from being processed. So I cannot stress that enough. If you apply to King's, you're accepted to King's, you register at King's, you're a King's student, you would put on your application, you're a University of King's College as your educational institution. We tell students to apply at least 2 months before you start your term. So basically, we start in September. So we tell students by July 1st, you should have already had your application put in online. More and more provinces are opening up their application earlier. Some do it in May, but most are usually online by June. But again, by July 1st, you should have applied for your student loan. Once you apply for student loan, we recommend that you check your portal, your online application status weekly. When you do first apply, give them a couple of weeks to get it entered in and get going. But it's always good to check in weekly just to see if there's anything outstanding, any documentation, things like that. We tell students never assume when you hit submit that that's it. The onus is on you to go in and keep checking your status. And basically how it works is if you're assessed by the government to get a student loan, the first disbursement will come in August, and we will look at your student account for the fall term and take what is owing. And the same thing for the winter term. It will come mid-December. If you're allocated to get a second disbursement, it will come in December for the winter term, and we'll look at your winter term student account and see what is owing. If your student loan is more than your student account, we only take what's owing on your student account on that day. The difference will go into your bank account because you would have had to provide to the student loan your banking information when you applied, or shortly thereafter, they'll request your banking information. If your student loan does not cover your student account in full, then you need to pay that difference by the term due date to avoid late fees and interest. We did have a question that came in ahead of us starting the session, and someone asked about parental contribution in terms of the income. So yes, it is a legal requirement that dependent students, have to have their parental income provided. So there are tax consent forms that have to be done. And basically they'll look at not just the parent's income, there's all kinds of factors. So basically like RESP, total assets, total investments. They'll look at how many siblings are in the family, how many siblings are going to post-secondary. So there's all kinds of factors, and every province has a different calculation. But again, just to answer that question, yes, parental income is looked at. It's the previous year's tax information that they look at. If something has recently changed, you can certainly let them know and supply them with documentation as they require it to get an update on the change of the situation. So now we're going to go to making payments. What do I owe? How do I find out? This is the payments guide. So basically, the biggest thing I want to say is that students do not have to have their student account paid when they arrive on campus in September. I know that other universities do require it. We do not require students to have their student account paid before they come in September, or even on the first day when they come. Payments can be made by personal check, bank draft, money order, debit card, which is in person. You can do an online bill payment. It's really popular, as well as student loan, student line of credit, things like that. So again, we work per term. So the fall term is September to December, with a due date usually about the third week of September. So for example, for this current academic year, the due date in September was September 19th. And then we go to the winter term, which is January to April. And again, the due date is usually about the second, third week of January. This year, because the way the calendar fell, the due date was January 22nd. I know some people call the winter term spring, especially some of the American organizations that contact me, they refer to the spring term. So your spring is actually our winter. And again, it's January to April. Basically, you'll have an online student account once you register. It's automatic. You don't need to set it up. Once you register, it's linked to your registration. And so you will be able to go online and check your student account. So the very first one up top there says check your tuition balance and obtain a statement. You'll get an email also at your university email account, and you'll get one in August. Throughout the term, you'll get one again in December to say your statement can be viewed for the upcoming term. A statement is just a snapshot of your student account at a certain day at a certain time. If, for example, you add a course the next day, your statement's kind of obsolete. It's not really current. So if you look at the website right here, it says current balance, and there are 6 steps. Oftentimes, students will get to step 4 and stop. Step 4 only shows tuition and incidental fees based on registration. It will not show residence. It will not show scholarships. So we get so many students that will email and say, where's my award? How come my residence is in charge? And it says on there, you must continue through step 5 and 6 in order to see your current balance. So that's what we recommend for students if they want to make a payment or check their student account. If they want to view a statement just to see what it looks like, or if they need it for other reasons, they continue down past number 6 and continue on with step 1 through 4 to get a statement. All right, so you follow the steps above and then continue on with down below for your statement. A special note is if you are a resident student, it is one student account. Tuition, incidental fees, and if applicable, residence and residence meal plan, it's all one student account. It is one payment. There's not separate payments that need to be made. And I think the other thing is that if we go back up to the top, it does show our due dates again. So we'll just have a quick peek to say that if you don't have your student account paid in time, there are late fees and interest charges that will go on the student account right away. We do not deregister students. We do not kick students out of residence. We just ask that you contact me to discuss your financial situation. We're always there to help. As Kathy said, there's bursaries, and there's other ways for us to help you. I know one misconception is when students go to do their student loan, it'll say, do you have any awards or scholarships? And students will put in the value of their 4-year scholarship amount as opposed to just their 1-year scholarship amount. So when I talk to students and we work out things like that, and it's an example of overstating their awards for the current academic year, just because of misconception in terms of misinformation and understanding of what was required, they end up getting more money because, of course, their scholarship amount was overstated. So hence that affected their income as opposed to their expenses. So if you ever have any problems not paying your student account, please contact me. We're always here to help and listen to you for sure. One last thing about tuition and fees is the King's Student Union Health and Dental Plan. This is administered through the King's Students Union office. It is not through student accounts other than it is charged on your student account. We indirectly pay it back to them. We're just helping them. So the King's Student Union Health and Dental fee is charged all up front in September only for the full 8 months, and students can opt out online. When you opt out online, the credit will go towards the winter term. So just be very careful. The opt-out starts September 1st and it goes until the fall term due date. So you usually have about 3 weeks in there to opt out online. And again, that credit will go towards the winter term. But the King's Student Union are wonderful. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can certainly contact them. Just make sure if you do opt out, you keep all of your information to prove that you did opt out online, because again, there is a deadline. And again, it's the first, at the term due date, sorry. So between September 1st, when they open it, to be allowed to opt out through to the fall term due date. So again, you have about 3 weeks in that time period to opt out. So now we're going to go back and go to the RESPs, sponsorship
Can I just-
funding,
Charlene,
external
I'm gonna
awards.
hop in for 1 second. and
Sure,
just,
yeah, go right ahead. Thanks.
Just mention to people, since you'd mentioned the KSU, I just wanted to point out the webpage I just shared was the KSU's website, which you can find at ksu.ca. So if you do want to read more information about the King Students Union's Health and Dental Plan, please feel free to go there to find it. And another thing that Charlene mentioned while she was speaking is that you can always reach out to her directly if you have questions. And it occurred to me that I hadn't actually shared her email address in the chat either. So that's accounts@ukings.ca. And so that's in the chat now as well. And Charlene, sorry for interrupting.
No,
You keep going right ahead.
it's okay. Thank you. So RESP and sponsorship funding external awards. So RESP, I get this one a lot. I always tell students and guardians, it's usually one of 3 things. Your investment company is going to want either a confirmation of enrollment, a statement of your student account, or they're going to have their own form that you need to get filled out. So a statement of your student account we just looked at online, that's something you can do yourself. In terms of a confirmation of enrollment, you can reach out to me or the registrar's office. There are instructions to do so. They were going to get it online, but we do have an attachment we can attach to an email and give it to you. But again, a confirmation of enrollment can be obtained online as well. And then the last, again, is if they have their own financial form. So if they have their own financial form and it's only asking to confirm enrollment, that would be something the registrar's office will assist. If the financial form is asking for costs, tuition fees, then that form will come to me and I'll fill that out. Okay. In terms of sponsorship funding, these are students who are fully funded. For example, Indigenous students, their bands will fund some or all their tuition fees and costs. Basically, we have our own form. It's called a third-party billing form. And students, along with their sponsor, have to fill out this form and provide it to me before the term due date. And then in turn, what I do is once the term due date has passed, because that is also the last day to add and drop courses. So we don't invoice before that date, but the first business day after the fall term due date, which again, as noted, is the last day to add and drop courses, I will do an invoice, send it on your behalf to your sponsor, and then we'll give 30 more days. So we'll defer late fees and interest for 30 more days for them to get the payment into us. So again, that's that one. And then in terms of external scholarships, if you have an external scholarship in your hand from your high school, for example, you can bring it in and put it on your student account. The only thing we caution is if we get a check that's co-payable, meaning it's made out to you and to us. So if we get one or if you get one, just come on into the office and we'll discuss it further. If you owe on your student account, we just ask you sign it over to your student account. If your student account is paid in full, we can sign it back to you, or you could still use it for your student account for future terms to help with your costs there. So now we're going to scroll back.
May I just hop into
Yeah,
just
sure.
note that there was a question asking for some clarification about health and dental. So the question says, is the student auto-enrolled in the KSU's health and dental and therefore must opt out if they have private insurance?
That is true. So if you are a full-time student, you are automatically charged the KSU health and dental fee. So you're automatically enrolled in it. So if you want it, you're automatically in it. Again, if you're a full-time student, so you don't need to do anything if you want to keep it. If you're a full-time student and you don't want to keep it because you have other coverage through a guardian, then yes, you can opt out online between September 1st and the fall term due date. I hope that helps. Oh, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, great. And I'll just note that the thing on the page right now is just a little bit of information about some places that you might want to look if you are looking for external funding. So I will note, it says it right here, external funding comes from organizations that are not King. So we don't officially endorse these. We just have heard good things about them from students that have had success finding scholarships. And so you can see a wide list of organizations like Universities Canada, Scholarships Canada, Wyconic, where you can go in and search for different kinds of scholarships that you might be eligible for. It is a little bit of legwork, but we also all know stories of students that have been extremely successful in finding all sorts of interesting scholarship opportunities. And one type of opportunity that sometimes gets overlooked is considering things like, is there a member of your family that is a veteran or has served in the armed forces? Is there, does your parent or guardian's workplace have an HR policy where they provide scholarships to employees' children? If you belong to a religious group or organization, sometimes churches, synagogues, mosques, etc., have different kinds of scholarship programs available. So those are all things that you may want to look into. Sorry, Charlene, I'll let you get right back into your.
Thank you so much, Julie. That's great. So yeah, we'll go back now and go to access to freedom of information. So back to the payments webpage.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I close the page. This is how we find it. There we go.
There we go. So one of the last ones, which is really important, we talk about this on the Residents Move-In Day. The president stresses it, and so do the professor, and so do I. Access to financial information. So basically, it's the FOIA POP. It's the Freedom of Information and Protection Act in Canada. So even though a guardian would be paying a student account in some instances, it is still confidential. And I know that's kind of hard sometimes, but it is the law here in Canada. So if a parent calls me or drops in or emails me, I cannot disclose any information about the student. Even if you ask me to do an estimate of what I think your child might owe, I can't even do that. Every student is so unique that a student account is one's own. So basically, the way to go around that is the student themselves can email me from their university email account once they're registered and get set up. There's no reason to do it yet. It's only confidential once you get registered. So once the student is registered, you'll have an email address through the university. You will use that email account to email me. And you'll just say, I would like and your mom, your dad, your grandparent, your uncle. You'll give me their name and their email address and just say, I'd like for them to have access to my student account. And so what that means is basically it's a convenience thing only. It's if they drop by, call, or email me, I can give them information about your student account. At no time do we contact them, give them a statement, call them, email them. We don't do any of that. The student is responsible for their student account. Again, it's just for the convenience factor only. And it's only if the student contacts us. So it's not enforced. It's a student choice. It does help if a student, their account is not paid on the tuition due date, they forgot, which happens. But if a parent calls me the day of and that's not on there, there's nothing I can do. So it's something for you to discuss with your parent, or if you're a parent if you want to talk with your child and get that done once September rolls around. So the next thing we'll go to is budgeting. And so budgeting is basically financial literacy. Like the more knowledge and more skills you have, the better you'll be prepared for your finances. So a budget is just that. It's, as we know, income less expenses. So when we talk about income, we talk about, for example, student jobs, and Yoli will talk about that in a bit, but we do have student jobs on campus. We talk about scholarships and bursaries already, external awards, which we just went over. We gave some examples. In regards to personal hobbies or talents, in terms of like, if you like to knit, you could sell your stuff. If you play guitar, you could maybe offer guitar lessons, things like that while you're on campus. You could even tutor if you're really good at something like writing and things like that. In terms of expenses, there's of course fixed expenses, which are the same every month. For some people, their cell phone bill may be the exact same every month. Variable are ones that can change. And as we all know, gas, for example, or even groceries are fluctuating. Irregular expenses are those that occur at different times throughout the year. So we just talked about tuition being, due in the fall and the winter term. And unplanned expenses are those that, if you lose your winter jacket or unexpected flight back home, things like that. So basically, when you look at your income less your expenses, if your income is more than your expenses, you have a surplus. If your income is less than your expenses, then of course you have a deficit, which is not a good thing. So if you do have a deficit, you're going to want to look at what am I spending my money on and maybe find ways to kind of reduce that. A really good way to do that is to keep receipts. I know sometimes email is a new way to get your receipts, but if you want that as well as hard copy receipts, and maybe just track them and look and say, wow, I didn't realize I was spending so much money eating out or things like that, just to maybe cut back on that. Another one is to use coupons. That's a great way to help with your costs. Another one is to look at the flyers. If you're not living in residence, you're going to have your own apartment, look at the flyers for the week coming up. And for example, if you eat chicken and chicken's on sale, just have a variety of chicken meals for that week. Just kind of plan based on the flyers. And then do it yourself, like I just said, rather than eating out all the time. Look at ways to prepare your meals. There's all kinds of stuff online in terms of preparing meals. And then just doing your budget spreadsheet. We do have an example there. There's many online. This is just ours in terms that it can be tweaked, whatever works best for you. We're going to scroll down and go to credit cards. Back when I went to university, orientation week, they would have be pushing credit cards on people. We're very happy now to say that credit cards cannot be obtained until you're 19 or under the parent of a guardian if you're younger. But if and when the time comes, just be very careful with credit cards. There's lots of misconceptions out there about credit cards. So basically, a credit card is good because it helps you build up your credit score, but only when the time is right do you want to start doing that. Basically, you want to get a credit card knowing that you can pay off your credit card every month. There's so many credit cards out there now with various rewards for flights, for points for flights and points for gift cards, things like that, which is very enticing. But if you cannot pay off your credit card at the end of every month, it's really something you want to think about before you jump in. It does affect your credit score. So in Canada, credit scores range from 300 to 900, 900 being the best. And your score will change over time. Businesses will use this in terms of if they want to know how risky you are. So if you go to buy a car, or a lot of times now even for rent, they'll look at it for that purpose as well. So just make sure that to maintain a good credit score, that you pay off your credit card every month. Now, with that said, a credit card will ask you to make a minimum payment. So when it comes to a minimum payment, it's great if you pay it off, but just know that you're still going to have every month to have to continue on to pay because you're not paying off your credit card. You're paying the minimum amount. So on the screen here, it says, let's say, for example, your credit card is $500 and your minimum payment is $100. If you only make that $100 payment every month at an interest rate of 19%, it will take you 8.4 years to pay off that $500 credit card. And in the end, your interest is almost as much, $498.52. So in the end, you're just shy of $1,000. So although you may go buy something as a treat, for example, if you get caught up in this, it's not really worth it in the end for that treat. Sometimes things happen, unexpected flight, you have to dump that on a credit card. Those things happen. But what we tell students is just be very, very careful with credit cards. All right, so then basically the other resources that we have are Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. This is not just for students. This is a national program. And the website is fantastic. It is for seniors. It is for parents. It is for guardians. It's for students. It's for everybody. And they have all kinds of wonderful tools and resources on there, from everything to, as we talked about, credit cards, about scams, financial literacy, all kinds of stuff. So I recommend that if you have time, just to kind of peek around there and look. And then basically the other thing is reach out to me. My email is provided down below. I am always here to help. There's never a silly question. A question is knowledge. And if you're thinking of a question, chances are other people are thinking of it too. So always reach out to me. I pride myself on replying with my email, so I will definitely get back to you. And I guess if there's one more takeaway from this, it's just to, once you get to King's, and we hope you come, but when you get to King's, please make sure you check your email. You can link your email to like your personal email. Just check your spam folders and things like that. But email is so important. It is the only way we communicate with students at the university, is through one's university email only. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlene.
You're
So
welcome.
one other subject that we wanted to talk about before we just open it up for questions generally is employment on campus. A few of you had questions about student jobs. So I did just want to highlight that there's a page on our website called Student Employment. So if you put student employment in the search, it'll take you there. There are typically jobs on campus. Not always. At different times of year, there's more jobs available in different offices, but about 1/3 of King students find a job on campus during their degree, which is a pretty impressive statistic, especially considering the size of our community. So if you're looking for employment listings, you can always find them on the student employment page, and they'll change regularly depending on the time of year. So for example, the day we happen to be looking at this page right now, you'll see that they need a front desk agent and housekeeping staff for conference services. Conference services is the thing that happens on our campus over the summer when academic term is over, so our students are not living in our dorms and studying. And instead, we use our dorm rooms and residences as like a summer accommodation for tourists who are traveling through, or for people who are planning conferences and events. So that's a great summer job that's being listed here. There's also a great and difficult winter job, but if you're someone who enjoys being outside and getting fresh air, and you want to work with the facilities team, and you just want to have a job that makes a little bit of extra money during the winter, we need someone shoveling snow on our campus. So different kinds of job listings will come up. Some of them will be the types of positions that you see here, where we need some administrative support or some manual labor help in order to get things done on campus. Other jobs that get posted on campus will be things like, one really cool job that I always like to highlight is that my office and my team hires student ambassadors to help promote the university. That's a really fun job if you're someone who likes connecting with people. And if you're not shy and you like talking in public, you might want to be a student ambassador or one of our campus tour guides. We have students doing work to support social media at the university, being photographers for events, all sorts of interesting jobs like that. And then there's also some employment programs at King's. And student-run businesses. So on the campus, our campus bookstore, the Wardroom, which is our student lounge, and the Galley, which is our campus-run coffee shop, all three of those are fully student-owned and operated businesses, which is really quite special. So those are a great opportunity for student employment. We also have a really neat student assistantship program where students can be paired with one of our professors to be a research assistant. This was actually I'm a King's alumna myself, and one of my first jobs on campus was being a research assistant to one of our professors, and I learned so much. It was a really valuable type of employment opportunity. I think it looked great on my resume, and certainly when I was applying for graduate school programs, I think it really helped give me a sense of what kinds of things I might be doing in a master's degree. So that's a really valuable opportunity as well. And in addition to that, there are several opportunities for different kinds of research fellowships or work placements that exist through the university, and we will post those here. We try to encourage you to get the most out of your student employment experience. So there's a workbook on our website as well that can give you a chance to reflect on the things you've learned in your job and help build those assets and those skills into your resume to kind of enhance your employability while you are a student. And even though it's not listed on this page, another really neat program that we have at King's is called the Liberal Arts Passport to Innovation. As you probably know, you probably already know, King's has a lot of sort of liberal arts and humanities focused programs. Sometimes people overlook the ways that people with a humanities degree can be real innovators and entrepreneurs and work in a wide variety of different sectors, including tech and new media and all sorts of areas. So if you're interested in building up your skill set to take the skills you're learning in a liberal arts or humanities education and learn how you can transfer those skills into a wide range of workplaces, we have people on our campus that are teaching you those skills. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Some important things to keep in mind here is that student employment is just that. It's student employment. It's student-centric. So you should not, as a student, be working more hours than you can feasibly manage that will negatively impact your academic success. We don't want that for you. You don't want that for you. Every student's going to find a balance that works for them. But, ideally, you are working a little bit, as much as you kind of want to be during the school year, but are still really prioritizing studying for your classes, staying on top of reading, and also making sure that you're prioritizing the other things that are important to your well-rounded experience as a student. So if you play a sport, if you're involved in a play, if you love volunteering, all of those things are important and they're part of your overall mental health and wellness while you're at university. So do try to think about how you're going to balance the amount of employment that you want with all of those other factors that are going to be part of your university experience. And that's really going to vary depending
For a
on the
second?
person. Yeah.
Sure, thanks. Payroll is done through the office I reside in, and I know that when I used to do payroll years ago, we do encourage students to not work more than 20 hours a week. So like Yoli said, you do what is tailored best for you, but they do look out for students that tend to work over 20 hours on a consistent basis. So we recommend students work less than 20 hours, and that's per week, sorry.
It's also important to note that if you are an international student, there's going to be legal requirements that limit how much you can work in Canada. Right now, the rules and regulations around those legal requirements are potentially in flux, but they will be printed on your study permit. It'll be right there on your study permit. And for international students, it's especially important to not go over those restrictions. That could have really negative impacts for you. It could impact your ability to, for example, get a postgraduate work permit after you graduate, which would allow you to stay in Canada if you wish. So it's really critical that you kind of pay attention to those stipulations on your study permit if you are an international student. Okay, so at this point, I think what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen and just open it up for a Q&A. I think we have gotten some questions in the chat that we may not have been able to answer just yet. We do have a question here from an international student who's interested in applying to the university and also plans to apply for a student loan. And there's a question here about just what order do we do these things in. So there's going to be a lot of country-specific information if you're an international student. But the first step in all of these processes, the first step for scholarships, the first step for bursaries, the first step for loans, is apply to the university. For any of the other things that you want to do, you do need to be admitted to the university for your academic program first. So start with the university application. And to the person who asked this question, the international student, you've got some very specific questions. Please reach out to us, admissions@ukings.ca. We can help guide you through the application process and give you some information about the kind of next steps and order of operations that are relevant to you. If there are other questions that people want to share, please do feel free to pop them in the chat, or better yet, even use the Q&A feature in Zoom. We'll kind of monitor those questions. We do have about another 15 minutes or so. We'd like to kind of get to as many questions as you have. Maybe we already covered all of it, who knows? We'll just wait for a moment because it could be that people are typing things in right now. And if you have a question, there's probably a chance someone else is thinking the same thing, so you can be the hero who asks it. Okay. Someone asked, roughly when do student loan applications open up? Charlene, I'm going to throw that one to you.
So student loan applications vary by province. Some provinces will have them up in May. Some will have them up in June, but by July 1st, they should all be up. And like I said, more and more provinces are backing it up. So you can certainly check online in May. Just make sure when you go online that if you're a full-time student or plan to be full-time, you're clicking on a full-time application and that you're also clicking on the right academic year. So for the fall term, you're going to be clicking on the 24-25 full-time application. It's really important because you may still see the old one up there for someone who's applying for a summer student loan. That won't be you. So make sure you're applying for the 24-25 academic school year full-time student loan, again, through the province you're a permanent resident of.
And we'll just take a minute,
I just wanted to add, for any American students who might be considering applying for a US federal loan, I think you should go on the studentaid.gov website and look to see about filling out the FAFSA, the free application for student aid. That may be open now. And so if you'd like to do that and start filling that out, and then contact me and let me know that you're in the process of filling in the student loan application, that I can watch out for your student aid report and get back to you as soon as that's generated.
that's great. We actually just had someone confirm in the chat that the FAFSA application is open now. So for any other Americans who might be listening, go to it. And I'll just reiterate again in the chat, all 3 of our email addresses, so you know how to reach us. So for Kathy and information about bursaries or scholarships as well, even though we didn't touch on those during this session, that's awards@ukings.ca. For Charlene, that's accounts@ukings.ca. And if you have questions about the sort of admissions process or just applying to the university in general, admissions@ukings.ca gets you to me and my colleague Tara and my colleague Ashley to kind of guide you through the process. Okay, we have another question here. What about Canadians who are not residents of a province? Are there any ways to apply for Canadian support?
You live in a territory? Is that what you're asking? Sorry.
Or potentially outside of Canada? Canadian citizens who live
So if
outside.
you're a Canadian citizen, but for example, you're living in the States and you want to apply for a Canada student loan, it would be where you last resided. And if you didn't, it would be where your parents last resided. And so they would apply through the province in that regards.
While we've got a little bit more time and I see we're waiting for a few more questions to trickle in, there's something I sort of wanted to share about student loans that I think can sometimes be like a little daunting for people to think about. And when you were listening to Kathy talk about the bursary application, Kathy mentioned that we do encourage people to apply for the loan. So this can vary a lot depending on what province you're in, if you're applying for Canadian student loans, but many provinces will do an assessment and then provide kind of a mixture of some loan and also potentially some grant, grants being money that you don't have to pay back. Also, many provinces have different kinds of interest-free repayment plans or even debt forgiveness programs. We always like to be a little bit cautious when we talk about those because those policies can change. They're decided by the provincial government, not by us. So the provincial government can change with the next election and the system could change. But just for example, right now here in Nova Scotia, there are loan forgiveness programs that exist. So I would encourage you to think about it, to think about applying. I know that when Charlene was speaking earlier about credit cards, we use the phrase bad debt. Student loans typically do not carry that same stigma or taboo around them. They're not really bad debt. So I know that they can be a little daunting, but it is still something that's worth consideration. We have a question here about an application fee waiver for international students. So at King's, we almost never do a waiver of application fees. We do have some special events, usually ones that are hosted on campus, like our open house, where we'll provide a waiver for the $65 application fee. However, if you if the application fee, that $65 application fee is a real barrier for you applying, then what I'd encourage you to do is reach out to admissions@ukings.ca and tell us about the circumstances. that will be a decision that will be made on a case-by-case basis by Tara, who leads our admissions team. But if you are requesting an application fee waiver, and there's a reason that you're requesting it, I would encourage you to just reach out and let us know a little bit about those circumstances. So a great question. And then we also have a question here that says, is there any differentiation between Canadian citizens and permanent residents when it comes to loans?
No, they're treated the exact same. So again, it's just where you're a permanent resident of, that's who you would, where you apply for your student loan. And if you don't live in Canada, like I said, you would just look at where your parents last resided or where you last resided to apply for your student loan.
Wonderful. Okay, yeah, I think the person who was asking the question as a permanent resident, so that's great.
And again, like I
Um,
said, in terms of your student loan, you're only applying for one student loan. So you'll hear someone say, oh, Canada student loan, Nova Scotia student loan, and it can all be very confusing, but there is only one application. So if you're a Canadian and then you're from Nova Scotia, you're only applying through Nova Scotia for a Nova Scotia student loan, and then they'll assess it accordingly because there's a federal portion and a provincial portion, but it's all within that one application, which would be through the province you're a permanent resident of. So there's only one, which is good, easier.
all right. Well, it looks like all the questions that are in our queue have been answered, which is wonderful. You may have other questions that you just don't want to ask in a webinar setting. So again, I'll just highlight that our email addresses are there in the inbox, so you can always reach out again. I'll also remind you that you're going to get a follow-up email from me sometime tomorrow. And that follow-up email will include a recording of this webinar, so you can go back and listen again if you missed something. I'll also list some other upcoming events that we have at King's. So if you want to explore those events, I'll just give you some highlights. There's some really fun stuff coming up this month. We're doing a webinar that's all about our varsity athletics teams. So if you're someone who loves volleyball, basketball, rugby, soccer, or badminton, we would love for you to cut online and get to meet some of our coaches and learn about why it's really fun to be a King's Blue Devil. Go Blue Devils. Another event that we have coming up later this month is a writing workshop. If you're a high school student and you really want to develop your essay writing skills before you go to university, you can join our writing coach online for some tips and tricks. And if you really enjoyed that and learned some good and useful skills in our writing workshop, we're also running a little essay writing contest where you could potentially win all the books you need for our first year program, foundation year program. And then I will mention again, if you are close to Halifax or can travel here, we would love to see you at our winter open house on February 24th. So you'll be getting a reminder email about all of those events. Oh yes, the writing workshop link for those of you who it will go in the follow-up email that's going to everyone who registered. Yeah, really, really cool event. Like I said, it's hosted by Mark Burke, who's the writing coach for the foundation year program. Wonderful. Thank you so much for choosing to spend a little bit of your time with us this evening. And thank you very much, Kathy and Charlene, for joining me on the panel tonight. We look forward to hearing more from all of you and getting your questions. And we especially looking forward to hopefully meeting you on campus this September. Thank you. Good night.